everybody, it's the me, GamePing21, and today we have a Harman double feature. Oh boy. Now, again, for those of you who may or may not know who Darman Smith is, he is the Nintendo fanboy who basically everyone decides to use as a punching bag whenever they need an easy video for something, and I found a couple of videos that I wanted to talk about today. Now, the two videos that we're going to be looking at is both surrounding the Doom series and basically why and how Doom is not great and why the new age Doom is not going to be great either. Now, overall, do I think that Harman's going to have a fair and justified opinion here? No. In fact, both of these videos are kind of hypocritical of one another if you kind of think about it in one way, shape, or form. I didn't realize to me until I watched them both back to back that I'm like, these are very interesting, so I'll just put them together. Again, yeah. I'm probably going to have to slow down videos at some point due to a job transfer, so maybe not. I'll release an update when that actually happens, so let that just know in the back of your mind that videos might slow down just a bit. But overall, in that context, we can just, I guess, take a look at some very hypocritical and bad opinions on the Doom franchise as a whole. Again, if you like what it is that I do, please hit that like and subscribe button, which is always enough for this channel, but if you want to support me in any other way, shape, or form, links down to everything in the description below. With that being said, let's get started.
It's time to expound a little bit more on the Doom situation in regards to just how I feel about the franchise, how I feel about the IP, how I feel about its legacy, how I feel about this game as a whole. And I was kind of thinking about it because, I was playing Doom on stream. I was playing through the Switch port of the original, and I was having fun. I was enjoying myself. It was good for what it was. A mediocre PC game for the mid 90s. And it really got me thinking, like, why is this game put on a pedestal? Why is this game so worshipped?
Well, it's not really worshipped, but it is one of the bigger-ish games that released during the early to mid-90s. Now, I'm not going to say that Doom itself... Well, I'm not going to say that Doom itself was a great game, at least in terms of today's standards, I guess. But at the time, and again, putting everything into perspective, you have to realize how innovative it actually was. Harman will go into detail about this a little bit later. Well, detail in terms of Harman standards. But, the thing with Doom is that it's always attributed to the first-person genre, the first-person shooter genre in general, and it was one of the first actual first-person type games to take place in a kind of environment that was pseudo 3D. If you know your history and you know your crunchy id history or whatnot, it wasn't like an actual 3D game. It was like a 2D game, but from a 3D type perspective. Again, math, numbers, and game development engines that I could never possibly understand or explain in a coherent manner aside, yes, it is seen as innovative because it was one of, if not the first-person type games to be released massively marketed. Now, again, that's not to say there weren't other first-person games, but usually they were things like Harrier-type shooters or something like that. But this one, you actually had it from a first-person of the shooter from, like, a person's perspective, like a person, like a boots-on-the-grounds person. But let's continue to hear what he has to say on this.
And every single time people will try to scream at you like this is an innovator, like there was never anything like it. Oh, it's so cool. Like they try to act as if Doom has never been done before. And I kind of thought about it and I realized the only thing about Doom that's different from older shooters is that it's in the first person perspective. It is a shooter.
Yes, that's the main reason as to why, because it's gains from like a 2D side-scrolling perspective to a more 3D perspective, and eventually led to, I think, Quake, though I'm not too certain about that.
The first person shooter is a subgenre in the wider shooter genre. So Doom is an alternate take on games that have been made around since the 70s and 80s. So
I mean, correct, but first-person shooters have become their own, like, genre in and of itself. You have general shooters of it, yes, but those shooters encompass a wide array now in terms of things such as shoot 'em ups or shmups, or things like side-scrolling shooters or third-person shooters or first-person shooters now. And certainly, if you break it down like that, sure. But then you'd also have to remember that if that's the case and that's the logic that we're going with, Mario isn't the one that invented the platformer. Because there were platformers before Mario. And in the wider platforming type genre, that means that Mario wasn't an innovator in that context, because it created the Mario platformer, but not the general notion of platformer. You see how dumb that logic is if you follow the same line of logic for a game that you like or a game that you think is very good and innovative? Lets you think,
Superior games like Contra, Space Invaders, Gradius 3, the list goes on and on. Like, there are so many other better shooters than Doom.
I find it very weird how never in my life have I heard Doom being compared to Space Invaders. That's just wild to me. Now, to Contra, I can kind of see it, like original Doom, that is. To original Doom and Contra, I can see that. That seems like just kind of an apples to oranges, but like the apple kind of tastes like an orange and the orange kind of tastes like an apple. You know what I mean? But like Space Invaders and I don't even know the third one are all like side scroller shooters or in Space Invaders type shooters. Those are not that. I think that Space Invaders actually would fall under the shmup category, though I'm not certain, because shmup is like it's a weird genre. Anyway, I think actually maybe Galaga actually is more of the first shmup. Never mind. Anyway, moving on.
When you really break it down into brass tacks, the only thing different about Doom is that it's in the first person.
Yes, and that was the innovative part of the actual game.
And because it's in the first person, the level design is more limited, the bosses aren't as good, the combat isn't as good, and it all just leads into this middling, confusing experience that doesn't reach the heights of the original Contra, right? Like, Doom struggles to compete with superior 2D Japanese shooters that were several years old at that point.
What? That doesn't make any sense. So okay. Let me break down what Harman just said. So because the game is in the first person, that means that you have to pretty much say that the level is linear, right? And it is not as innovative because it's Jesus Christ. It's not. That's the problem with that. I would argue that Contra is far, far more linear. Why? Because it's 2D. There's weird things certainly there's like weird things in every video game. But in Doom, why the hell, right, are you saying that Doom had a level that was not that was linear when it was like, I don't get what he's talking about. That makes no sense. What are you on, Harman? I just realized that. Saying that, oh yeah, because the game is in first person, therefore it is more linear. No. The game is in first person. Like, the levels are more labyrinthian than you'd think they are, or that they actually are. So no, you're wrong.
And that is the reality of the franchise, is that it was always behind the times. It only appealed to edgy Western sensibilities. It had no real, it offered no real evolution or growth or really contributed anything at all to gaming. It was just in the first person. That's it. When you take that away from it, Doom becomes nothing more than a mediocre shooter that is lost in a sea of far superior shooters on Nintendo platforms.
Oh my God. Yeah. The amount of shooter platformers on Nintendo. Like what? Fucking Mega Man, which is a dead franchise. Contra, which has also not seen a game release in a long ass time. What? Like Cuphead? Fucking Cuphead? It only had one game and came out on Nintendo Switch later in life. that's like saying if you were to take the platforming out of Mario, then it just like it's not an innovative game because it's just a video game that wasn't even in the platforming genre. Like, what does that mean? Again, saying that, oh yeah, it didn't really innovate or do anything. Yes, it created an entire subgenre all on its own. A subgenre that has become probably the most popular subgenre of any of the shooter franchises so far. Like, do you see another Galaga remake coming out? What about more of like Contra games? Do you see any of that shit? No, you don't, because the first-person shooter genre has taken over the entire shooter genre, or at least 90% of the shooter genre. I'm not certainly about that. So, okay, but like, what the fuck? Like, I'm so confused as to why he even said that. But of course, we have some more hypocritical talks here because he says that he's not going to talk about Doom: The Dark Ages and how he's wondering if Doom: The Dark Ages will be an improvement over the worst Doom. So now he's going from talking down about the original Doom, saying how the original Doom was bad when it came to, comparing shit to Nintendo, despite the fact that Doom 64 and Doom 2016 on Nintendo Switch exists. I'm not sure if Doom Eternal is on the Switch. It might be, but another wrench thrown into the 60 FPS on Doom at Dark Ages or whatever. Never mind. Not important. Let's just take a look at this while I'm still a little bit angry here.
We all know that Doom Eternal is by far the worst game of the Doom franchise. 3 is better than it, 2016 is better than it, like the first two are better than it, obviously, right? Eternal is like this really weird, like redheaded stepchild that's beloved by all those who weren't around for the older Doom games and despised by everybody who has, because that is like the reoccurring theme we've seen with Doom Eternal is that it's worshipped by like underage Zoomer YouTubers, people who never even played 2016, while everyone else just kind of looks at this and just goes like, yeah, that's not Doom.
Oh my god. I'm going to have an aneurysm. Seriously, though. Watching this and saying, like, oh yeah, I'm a true Doom fan, when in the very last video that we talked about, he essentially just said, oh yeah, Doom was not innovative enough. Doom was not good as like other shooters and didn't create an entire subgenre that is still wildly fucking popular. That is still like widely played, widely praised in terms of creating this genre of video game. Yet you're coming here and saying that now Doom Eternal's the worst one because Doom Eternal is quote unquote the red-headed stepchild. Despite the fact that I'd say that more people look at Doom 3 and it's like, what the fuck are you doing here again? Because if you don't remember, Doom 3 was trying to be more modern military, like story oriented, which up until that point, Doom wasn't really that, like, at all. And it also kind of dated itself. I will say, though, the design of some of the guns was really cool in terms of the 3D perspective. I know that I've only really seen them in, like, Gmod skits or whatever. But, like, that still doesn't make them any less cool looking in terms of that. But saying that Doom Eternal is not widely praised by people, I mean, I guess it depends on how you want to look at it. I've played both Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. I actually played Doom Eternal before I played Doom 2016. And while I can say that Doom Eternal is good and is a thing that's okay, Doom 2016 is just a little bit more Doom, if that makes sense. So I guess you can say that I do not. I guess you can say that like Doom Eternal isn't as good as Doom 2016, but I think that is because that in Doom Eternal they put a little bit too much in there. Think Valve's Portal 1 versus Portal 2. Portal 1 was very tight in its design. It was very puzzle oriented. It had very interesting things. The ramp up in difficulty was always nice in that context. But when Portal 2 came out, it became a little bit more like longer and wasn't as tightly designed. There were a couple of things where it was like, not really the greatest, but it still was Portal, and it still had a lot of the very lovely designs and things like that, and it created some interesting innovations, giving players more content. But it still felt a bit bloated to some reviewers. Again, you got to remember, this was back during a time different to now. But again, very weird to start off saying that Doom Eternal is the worst one of the Doom franchise, and like, oh, I'm an actual Doom fan, or you're just perpetuating yourself as that. Anyway, let's continue.
And this has happened to me several times where like I start thinking about Doom Eternal again, and I forget why I hate it so much. And every time I had to like rack my brain to think about it. And what ends up happening is that you realize the game is so unbelievably forgettable that you can't remember anything about it. Outside of a handful of enemy designs and mechanics and like some lines of dialogue, like oh the game is utterly forgettable and leaves no impact on you at all. It is an inferior Devil's Third.
Oh my god, of course you would say it's an quote-unquote inferior Devil's Third, which is, I believe, a third-person action shooter from Nintendo. Jesus Christ. I just, like, sometimes whenever I watch a Harman video, I want to put my foot through a wall because of the leaps in logic that he makes. But let's just, for whatever reason, take him at his word and say that, like, Devil's Third as well as Doom are comparable, which they kind of are. But I've never played Devil's Third. As far as I could tell, I've played both of the Doom games, but Devil's Third, I've seen gameplay of it. It doesn't look good. But then again, I think that Devil's Third was released in like 2016, 2015, maybe early 2012, if I were to really stretch, but I'm not sure of its release date. But again, you're comparing a third-person action shooter from a first-person arena shooter, which... So,
To put it very, very, very simply, Ninja Gaiden, a 20-year-old game at this point, does more, with the idea of one man going up against demons than Doom ever will or ever has, right? Like,
no. Just fucking no. You're just straight up wrong. Like, yeah, certainly, Ninja Gaiden can have people going up against demons and stuff, and I don't think that Ninja Gaiden is the thing that you're actually talking about, or you would be talking about of a thing going up against demon, because I think Ninja Gaiden is a person going up against, like, ninjas. So, yeah. But also, I think that if you want to have, like, another one of a one-man army one for that, you'd probably be looking at, what was it, Shadow Warrior? Yeah, the Shadow Warrior franchise, which actually does have one man going up against demons, but it was also, again, inspired by Doom, so, the quote-unquote Doom shooter still, like, what?
It's crazy just how much better Ninja Gaiden is, how much more difficult, how much more intense, how much more is going on than Doom Eternal. So much so that like the Ninja Gaiden 4 announcement completely overshadowed the Doom the Dark Ages announcement during the Xbox showcase.
That is just the wrongest statement fucking ever. Both Ninja Gaiden 4 and like Doom the Dark Ages were being talked about, like, I think equally. But also, again, he's talking about the Xbox showcase, which shows you how old this video is. But the reason why Ninja Gaiden 4 was actually talked about a little bit more, or from what I could see, was being talked about a lot more, was because of the fact that there was also, like, the re-release or the redoing of Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, if I remember correctly. And again, we haven't had a Ninja Gaiden game in a long-ass time, so, Yeah, and with the rising of the Souls genre, yeah, Ninja Gaiden is probably going to find his home and be a little bit more profitable than last time it was around. So,
Ninja Gaiden is just so much better than Doom. It's not even funny. But like when you really stop to think about it, when you think about like the Dark Ages and how it looks and stuff like that, you have to ask yourself like, is this going to be better than Doom Eternal? Because like I do think that if the developers actually learn from their mistakes with Eternal, that they could make something interesting and fun. I was watching the trailer and I was kind of like, yeah, this does not look as good as Ninja Gaiden 4. But taking that away from it, like looking at like what they were doing with the Dark Ages, like at the very least, it looks like it might be better than Eternal. Like if we get back up to 2016 quality, like this is a step in the right direction. Like this is something that might actually be worth playing again.
the amount that I want to put my foot through the screen right now. So again, saying that like, oh yeah, this isn't as good as Ninja Gaiden. That's your own opinion. Whether or not you will believe that opinion is whatever. I am an FPS trash panda, so I like FPS games. It's just my cup of tea, and it's delicious. But putting that aside, and my biases aside, how is it that you say this, and yet you also say things like Doom, the original, and the entire series of Doom games are mediocre in terms of things like Contra and fucking Space Invaders? Harman, you are like one of the just dumbest people to try to respond to at points because you have opinions that contradict each other like this. It's wild to me.
Like honestly. And I kind of realized that like, like after playing Eternal, after playing 2016, after going back to both several times for the past couple of years, yes, I am interested in playing the Dark Ages. But this is something that needs to be said, like, going into this, like, coming from someone who absolutely hates Doom Eternal, like, is the Dark Ages going to be good? Like, is it going to be better than the sloppiest slop that's ever been slopped, Eternal? Like I don't know.
Uh, Jesus Christ. Now, I'm not certain if it's like the sloppiest slop that ever did slop, because I would kind of put that more on Doom 3. Again, because Doom 3 was trying to be like modern military shooters at the time, or modern sci-fi shooters at the time, I should say. So, no, I don't think that it's going to be as bad as Doom 3. We know what we don't want, which is Doom 3. But again, I think that the reason why Eternal wasn't as good as Doom 2016 is because Doom 2016 had a tight design. It had some very balanced, I guess, in terms of the actual features of which it brought to the table. Now, that's not to say that Doom Eternal didn't have that same sort of thing. It just that it felt like, it was doing too much, which was the problem that I think most people would generally say between the two games. Doom 2016, though smaller, though having less features, though being a little bit older of a game, at least in terms of now, did have a lot of good to talk about in it. And it did have a lot of good things in it because, again, it was very tightly designed. However, when Doom Eternal came out, it was just doing too much and became not... I wouldn't say not Doom enough, but it didn't... Again, it's like putting the same amount of jam on toast. Like, you have two pieces of toast, and you put jam on it. One, the 2016, had a very decent amount of jam to kind of cover it in a nice thick layer. However, to try to make the jam better, they put more jam on the same sized piece of toast, and it just kind of didn't work because it was too much jam. So, yeah. Anyway, there's like a minute left of this video. We're not going to cover the rest of this because, quite honestly, I think you get the point here. Apparently, Doom Eternal is like the black sheep of the Doom franchise. And apparently, like, the Doom franchise as a whole was kind of garbo in terms of whatever the fuck Harman was saying, despite the fact that Harman has came back on his own thing, saying that he's come back to the games several times in the Doom franchise. So, I guess that makes him the Zoomer person who likes these kinds of games in terms of Doom. This quote-unquote mediocre game from the PC era in the early 90s. I don't know, dude. Seems kind of hypocritical to me. But I think that'll about do it for this episode of I Rant Into this microphone for seemingly a very infinited amount of time. If you like what it is that I do, want to support me in any other way, shapes, or forms, links down to everything in the description below. Again, I am looking to make album 7 coming out possibly sometime during the summer. I might release a couple of smaller things, though I'm probably going to be taking a break from a lot of the internet stuff due to work. But overall, I'll let you know about updating and stuff when that happens. My name is GamePeng21, and a peace.
Hey man, can I get a favor?